Hey crafty friends, today we are going to sew this felt Stegosaurus. The pattern is listed in the description below for free, so click it, print it out, grab your crafting supplies, and let's get started. It is beginner and kid friendly. To do it, you're going to need some felt, something to trace a pattern with, scissors, embroidery floss, which is just kind of thick thread, ideally colors that match your felt, a needle with a big eye at the top that can fit the embroidery floss, oops, and the pattern. So this pattern is linked in the description below. You can print it for free. Just click, print, cut it out, and come back here and let's get started and sew this together. Once you have your pattern cut out of paper, we're going to come back here and we're going to trace this body part of your Stegosaurus 2 times. We're going to trace his tail spikes 2 times, his legs 2 times, his arms 2 times, and his back spikes just once. And when you're tracing your pattern, be sure that you trace it on this side, kind of where you can see the lines, and then you're going to flip it and you're going to trace it on the other side too. You're going to do that same thing for any of these that you're tracing 2 times. When I trace, I try and keep my pattern really close to the edge, so I waste as little of the felt as possible so I can use all the rest of this for other future projects. So just try when you're lining up your patterns, instead of just putting it in the middle and tracing it wherever you can, try and trace it as close to the edge as you can. This is going to save you a lot of felt for awesome future projects. The next step is to cut out your felt. Now, when you're cutting out your felt, you want to cut that line that you traced off. If you don't, you're going to end up with marker lines that show up on the back of your felt. So this one I've cut down really good. If you cut on the outside, all these black lines are going to show up, or might show up depending on what parts of it we're sewing. So just as you're cutting it out, cut right against that line and cut it off. Also, you're going to want to save all these little bits of felt that you're cutting off. They work really great to stuff your creature at the end. So we've got to have something that makes him plush inside. I find these felt scraps to be perfect for it. You can also use polyfiller, and sometimes I even will like cut up and use a plastic bag to fill it. So there's lots of options that are easy and relatively inexpensive, but this one is my favorite way to reuse. Cutting out the felt is probably my least favorite part of the project, just because it takes a long time and is a little bit tricky. Having sharp scissors are going to make it easier, so you might have to use sharper scissors. I feel like kid scissors are not a good fit for this. They're just not sharp enough to get through the felt. And if you are a younger person doing this, you might need some adult help getting these pieces cut out. Once you have this cut out, then the real fun can start. And I didn't go all the way down on my pattern here when I traced it, so when I'm cutting it out, I do like the space in these spikes a little bit. So I'm cutting my pattern just down and out a little bit more than I traced it. You can do the same for yours, or you can do it just how you traced it. All right, again, hang on to your fabric scraps because these are going to be great to go inside him. Okay, next, before we start sewing it, we're actually going to attach the arms and legs. So you're just going to want to place them kind of where they go. Okay, now we have all of our pieces. The first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to sew on the eyeball, and we're going to sew the arms and the legs on before we start sewing him together. So grab your needle, and I am grabbing some black embroidery floss for my eye. And I like to do it thick, so I usually lick my string to get it flat enough to put it through. And then I line up both sides at the end. We're going to do a circle knot here, which is where you just bend it in half, put the tail through the loop, and then I usually put my fingers right on where these loops are together and try and pull it towards the end of where my strings are. And that gives me a nice knot. And then you grab your needle and you pull it to the very end. So you have it nice and tight. Now we're just going to kind of look at it and decide where we want our eyeballs. I'm going to put his eyeball right here. So I'm going to go through and back through really close together. And then I'm going to take my needle and pulling this through a little bit, and I'm going to put it through my 2 strings right here. And this is going to knot it around my fabric. And that eye is kind of small, so I'm going to go back through probably 2 or 3 times, just right over the same place, and just make that eye a little bigger. If you have a black bead, or you can also sew on just like a felt circle as an eye, but I like the thread eyes. All right, that looks a little bigger. And then I'm going to tie off my knot. I'm just going to push my needle through this bundle of threads in the back. And then I'm going to take this tail of it. I'm going to loop it around the top of my needle. I'm going to hold it in place with my thumb and pull it through. Oh, it's a little tight. And that's going to create a knot right on the back of this. And then I can trim off my thread and I don't have to worry so much about him unraveling. Okay, now I'm going to do an eyeball on my second piece. But for this, I'm going to line it up first to make sure that I'm lining it up the same way because I want the messy side of my knot to be on the inside on both of them. So I want to make sure I'm going to sew it on the right way. So when I line it up, I'm going to flip it over. Okay, I need the messy part there. So I'm going to do another loop knot. Pull it through. And then I'm going to make sure this messy side of the knot is on the back side right here. And I just pull it through and through. Okay, so now I have that messy knot on the inside of both of those when I line it up. Now we're going to get the floss that matches your felt. So for me, this is yellow. We're just going to pull a big length and we're going to repeat that to attach the arms and legs. So I'm going to pull my knot through. I'm going to line it up at the end so they're kind of the same. And then I'm making a circle and the tail in the middle. I'm grabbing onto the tail and I'm just kind of pushing this area where they're crossed close to where that tail is, holding it gently with my fingers and pulling it through. If you have really long strings over here, you might want to go through and cut them off. But most of it's going to be inside the dinosaur, so it doesn't matter so much. Okay, so now place your arms and legs the way you want them. And then, you know, that one I have a little bit of trace lines, so I'm going to put him on the other side to hide my trace lines a little bit. Okay. And we're going to start in the back. So this is going to be our messy side. This is where we want our knots to be. And I'm going to go through and through. And then I'm going to keep this here and I'm going to go through the middle of this. And because I don't care, this isn't an eye, I don't need that stitch to be so big. I'm just going to knot this one off again. So I'm going to put my needle through this bundle of threads right here, wrap my string around it, hold it in place with my thumb, and pull this through. There we go. We got one leg added. We're going to do that same process for the other 3 legs. So there's the 2 legs on that side. Now when I flip it over, again, I'm making sure that when I start it, that I'm doing it on the inside. And I also like his legs to look a little bit like he's walking. So I kind of like to put it on here first and change how they're positioned just a little bit. All right, so we have the eyeballs and the legs. Now it's time to do the real fun stuff and start sewing him together. So this time you're going to want kind of a long piece of string. And if it ends up not being long enough, that's okay. We can do a knot as we go and add more string. Don't worry about it being too short, but get a string that is long, but not so long that it's hard to manage. Usually I measure from about my fingertips to like my shoulder. And I think that's a good length to start with. Okay, and this time, instead of doubling it up, I'm just going to do a single knot at the end. So I'm doing again, the twist knot where I'm doing a loop, bending that end thread over, and then holding where it's crossed with my finger so I can slide it down, just creating one knot at the end of this. And when I start my dinosaurs, or when I start my plushies, I like to start kind of between their back legs because it's going to hide my starting knot. And to do this one, we're just going to line up your 2 pieces of felt. We're going to grab your needle and we're going to go through both of your felt body parts, pull it almost to the end. And then right here, we're going to pause and we're just going to stick the needle front through a few of these threads. And then we're going to pull it tight. We're going to pull that knot all the way down to the end. And now we're going to do what's called a blanket stitch. This is a modified one, so we're going to go through both pieces of felt. And then we're going to grab this tail and we're just going to put it over the front of the needle. And you can hold that in place if you need to. And we're going to do that all the way from here to the end of his tail over here. And you might need to realign your pieces as you go so you make sure they're kind of even at the end. We're going to pull the needle through, put the string over, and then pull it all the way down. And it makes this nice kind of lined up stitch where you get this line across the belly, but you also kind of have these side stitches. This is a blanket stitch. And if your string is feeling really long and hard to manage, grab the end of it and just pull it down a little bit. Okay, so now that we've got all the way to the end of the tail, we're going to do these tail spikes. So you're going to grab your white pieces, or whatever color you did these, we're going to fold them in half. So the curve kind of is back towards the tail, and we're just going to put them in this fold right here. And you might have to do it up a little bit depending on how thin your tail is at the back. It doesn't have to be right at the very back. I kind of like to angle them like one up, one down, but you do what looks good to you. And then we are going to do what's called a running stitch. I've got room for one more blanket stitch here, so hold up. I'm going to do blanket stitch first. And a running stitch, I think, is even easier than a blanket stitch because you're just going in one side, pulling it all the way through, and then back the other way, or back out the other side. So we're pulling it all the way through on this side, and then instead of crossing over the fabric, we're just going to poke it back through. Make sure we're getting all the pieces of felt, so these white ones and this yellow one on mine. We're just going to go in and out. And this is a running stitch. Now we're going to take these top spikes, and we're also going to see how they line up in. And we're going to put them in the back the way that we want them, just between these two pieces of felt. Looks good to me. And if you want to do a blanket stitch between these two, you can, or if you want to just keep doing the running stitch, you can, but we are going to use a running stitch to attach those orange ones to attach those back spikes to your dinosaur as well, to your Stegosaurus. So we're just going to keep doing a running stitch all the way from here around, or all the way from here until where the spikes end. So let's go ahead and do this running stitch. And once you get to the end of the spikes, we're just going to go back to the blanket stitch, and we're going to do a blanket stitch around the face and neck and chest, and then we're going to pause right here by these front arms. So again, the blanket stitch is where you go through and you wrap the cord, or you wrap the string around it and pull it. So we're going to go through both pieces, wrap the string around your needle, and then pull it through. And I am just going to tuck these eyeball strings in as I go, because it's okay for them to be on the inside of the dinosaur, but I don't really want them showing on the outside. And then we're going to pause right here, and we are going to start stuffing the inside of our Stegosaurus so he gets plush. So the way that you do it is you need a small piece, and you're going to stuff the faraway bits first. So I'm going to stuff his eye first and his tail first. So I'm going to take these bits of felt that I have left over. I'm going to cut them even a little smaller because this head and this tail is kind of a small piece. I'm just going to grab a little wad of it. Oop, I have not up there. Oops. And if you feel like your finger's not reaching, I find that a pen or a marker or scissors can help me push it into kind of like a trickier, tight spot that my fingers can't quite reach. Got his head stuffed pretty good. I'm gonna grab some for his tail. Okay, once you've got him stuffed up pretty good, we're going to continue with a blanket stitch from this edge, from this set of legs all the way back until the first set of legs where we started. And probably while you were stuffing, your stitches loosened up a little bit, so just pull on that knot to tighten it. And then we're going to keep going all the way to the end. It's going to get a little bit trickier to stitch it now that we have stuffing in him because he's a little fluffier. just go slow. Make sure you're getting both sides of the felt. Try not to get the inside stuff. Make these final few stitches to close them up. Okay, so this last stitch, we're going to go back through the one we started. Ah, my string. Got it added back on. Again, we're going to do this loop right over the beginning. And we're just going to do it a second time to help make an even stronger knot. So you're going to loop it 2 times over the edge, pull your needle through, and just tighten it up. Okay, and then my thread fell off, but let's see if I can add it. Now I just have this tiny bit of thread left, and I am going to poke my needle into my Stegosaurus and out up here. I'm going to grab it carefully, and I'm just going to let that tail part pull off, and then I'm going to pull it down. If it's really long, this one's a little long. I'm actually going to just trim this bit. Trim it up here. Going to pull it in. Now it's not going to snag or pull on anything inside. And there we have it. If you like this or you're interested in more easy felt projects, be sure to like and follow along. I should have another one for you next week.